Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're joined as we are on the first Monday of every month at this hour, 12 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time for the Joe Newby Hour. Joe, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Joe is the co-author of the extraordinary book entitled Banned: How Facebook Enables Militant Islamic Jihad. He is the bloggerator on the website conservativefiringline.com. He's published by WND Books Division called World Ahead Press. Joe, it's always a pleasure to see you. How is your parrot?
Well, the parrot right now is in his other room, but he's doing fine. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, Joe has a big parrot. Now, have you taught the parrot how to speak?
Yes, he actually speaks quite well when he wants to. He says all kinds of words, and sometimes he'll say things without us even prompting him to. But oh yes, he does speak.
That's great. I can hear him in the background just a little bit, so I wanted to prepare our audience for not thinking that you're out in the wild somewhere calling from the jungle, but you're actually out in California. California?
Idaho.
There you go. All right.
North Idaho.
There you go. Joe, the reports coming out of Washington in regards to Susan Rice are stunning.
Absolutely.
Catch us up on this developing story.
Well, here's the thing. We've known, and we've all suspected for quite some time, those of us in the conservative blogosphere, we've suspected for quite some time that the former Obama administration has been neck deep in this whole business of what they call unmasking members of the Trump transition team. We learned, for example, here just the other day, or actually just yesterday and this morning, we've learned that the Obama administration has actually been surveilling the Trump transition team, or the Trump campaign, if you will, Trump team, for somewhere in the neighborhood of about a year. And what came out yesterday by Mike Cernovich is an explosive report that fingers Susan Rice. You remember her. She's the one who came out after the September 11th
right.
Benghazi attack, and went on something like 5 Sunday news shows and lied through her teeth, telling America and the world that, oh, this is all the fault of a video that nobody's ever really heard of, right?
Right.
The same Susan Rice was fingered as being one of those, if not the main one, who requested that the names of these Trump team individuals be unmasked. And there's a very serious problem here, Eric, because when we get into the unmasking of individuals, now we're looking at some illegalities. Because if a name like that is unmasked, then basically the Obama administration has violated the law.
Now, at what point did she request these documents? It says that they've identified Rice as the person responsible for the unmasking after examining her document log request. She's not been active part of the government now for some time.
Well, maybe not officially. Okay, it's kind of like Valerie Jarrett. She's what's her position? This is true, but she's still very, very close to the Obama administration, the former Obama administration. I guess what we could all call now the deep state.
Right.
She's still very close to all this, and she was part of the administration in a sort of a I don't want to say peripheral way, but she was part of the administration up until it left. She may not have been an ambassador or holding whatever position she was holding during Benghazi, but she was part of that administration, and she did play a role there. So I'm thinking.
Does she still have access? These recordings that were obtained under general surveillance of foreign dignitaries, foreign operatives, foreign agents,
foreign nationals, yeah,
right, foreign nationals, is routine.
Right.
Standing FISA order for the intelligence community to be able to listen in and essentially redact the innocent citizens or a citizen of the United States who happens to be transacting whatever they're transacting. It could be you or I. On the phone,
Right.
I have contacts in the former Soviet Union that I talk to periodically, or I email periodically, that certainly I believe that not only is America looking at that, but so is the former Soviet Union. I'm well aware of that when I make that call or I have those conversations.
Oh, absolutely.
But I trust that if there was somebody on the other end that was doing something that was illegal, I'm completely unaware of it. I'm ministry. I'm looking at ministry opportunities and not at political agendas or
Correct.
allegiances, that they would redact my name from it, that they would not identify me, even if there was an investigation into that other party, that I would be protected under my right to privacy, because this was not a legal search warrant against me. This is a general search warrant for the listening in of these transactions. Now, in order
Correct.
to get that information, either through a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, or through channels, you have to know somebody in order to get that. And
Right.
they're reporting that she is responsible, but who gave the documents to her and when?
Well, yeah, and that's a very good question. And I think with what we've heard from Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who has oversight over this, I think he's got a lot more information he's going to have forthcoming on all of this. I think this is part of the reason why the Democrats are losing their minds and demanding that he be removed from that committee and be forced to resign from that committee. Chuck Schumer, as you may know, came out here just not too long ago and demanded that the House replace Nunes on that committee. What are they so afraid of? What is it that Nunes knows now that has the Democrats so scared?
Are we going to find out in this that James Comey is complicit in all this?
Well, that's entirely possible. I mean, I was just looking at an article here before we started talking. There are talks about an investigation, a Senate investigation, into one of Comey's lieutenants there, a deputy FBI director. They were talking about wanting to pay this former British spy money to produce this document about Donald Trump and these Russian prostitutes, the one that BuzzFeed put out there for the world to see, and got slapped down for it. The FBI found out that this thing was fake, and they decided they weren't going to pay this guy. But I have to ask the question: why would they pay this guy anyway? I mean, were they so desperate to find anything on Trump that this was the level that they were willing to go? I mean, all of this, to me, Eric, raises a lot more questions than provides answers, quite frankly.
Joe, this is kind of like where I am with my faith as a Jewish man that believes in Jesus. People
Right.
have been saying to me, well, you have to defend your position. They attack, I have to defend my position. And about 2 years ago, I said, you know what? You've had 2,000 years of investigation to prove that he was not. You've never
Correct.
brought me a shred of irrefutable evidence that he did not exist, that he did not do these
Right.
things. Until
Right.
you can prove to me that he wasn't, my default position is he was. In this case of Donald Trump and this investigation into the Trump campaign's ties with Russia, not a single piece of credible evidence has been brought forward. And they've had now, since these allegations began, they now have months with the full weight and value of our intelligence community, with every listening device possible, with every email possible, with every transaction possible, and they have not come up with even one, even shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct, as always. I mean, it's that they've been looking at Trump now for a year or more that we know of, and they have not come up with, as you said, a shred of evidence, not one iota. You know as well as I do, if they had something concrete, they wouldn't have waited until after the election. They would have come out about it, with it long before the election. Probably back in October,
They would have countered. They would have countered the Hillary Clinton email scandal with something that would put the spotlight off of her and put it back on Donald Trump to discredit him.
Absolutely.
Even this Rachel Maddow thing with this tax return blew up so much in their face that it became absurd.
And the absurdity goes even further, Eric. You'll love this one. Sean Spicer, I love this guy and the way he handles this media. They don't know what to do with him, I tell you. He made some quip about Russian dressing, in one of these press briefings. And so, what did CNN do in response? They actually did a report to look into Russian salad dressing. I kid you not. Is it really Russian? and they came to the conclusion, well, no, it didn't come from Russia. It came from, someplace in New Jersey or someplace.
Of course.
But it was so silly. I had one of my contributors here a while back, got a little snarky with the whole Russian salad dressing thing, and that's why it hit me so funny, because he put this piece out. And he was being funny with it. He was being sarcastic. He was saying, well, gee, will they investigate Ivanka Trump for maybe using Russian salad dressing? And he was joking. He was just joking. And so here, sure enough, here's CNN, the counterfeit news network, I guess now, and they actually produced a report about Russian salad dressing after Sean Spicer did this. And it's become a clown show, quite frankly, between the Democrats and between the media and this whole obsession with Russia. Like I said, Friday you had Nancy Pelosi admitting she had no facts to bolster their argument, if you want to call it an argument. It's a conspiracy theory, okay? She admitted she had no facts, but we got to do an investigation, you see. Sunday, okay, you've got Adam Schiff, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, who, remember, this is a guy who called Tucker Carlson a Russian spy, basically, right on national television, said he was doing the bidding of the Russians. And just last week or so, he was saying that, we have incontrovertible proof. It's way beyond circumstantial that there are ties between Trump and Russia. And he comes out on Sunday and says, he backtracks and then says, we can't definitively say there's any ties between Trump and Russia. Well, that's because there weren't any. And and I know, and your audience is smart enough to know that if they had evidence, they would have come out with it long before now.
Of course they would. Of course they would. This is the ultimate in diversionary tactics, in distraction, in every kind of tactic of this playbook that they have, which is clearly a unified playbook. This threat of a filibuster on Friday for the Gorsuch vote.
Mm-hmm. And that's a bad move, I think, for them to threaten that.
Well, what's going to happen when Ruth Bader Ginsburg retires? What's going to happen when Kennedy retires? What's going to happen when the new openings come out? They will have played every card in their deck and set the stage for literally an overthrow of the Senate in the 2018 midterm elections.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. The Democrats are making a huge, huge mistake by threatening a filibuster Gorsuch. I mean, keep in mind, all of these Senate Democrats loved Gorsuch back when he was being, put forward for the Circuit Court of Appeals. That they voted for him unanimously. Now they hate him.
Right.
What's up with this? And for them to use this, it's a really bad move, because if they decide to filibuster, and if the Republicans say, okay, you know what, we're going to go nuclear, we're going to change the rules. If the Republicans change the rules on Gorsuch, they're not going to be able to change the rules back. Those rules are going to stay. And guess what? Donald Trump can nominate anyone he wants. I mean, you and I, we look at Judge Gorsuch, and yeah, he's right. He's right down the path. He's the kind of judge that folks like you and I and others of our persuasion would want to have on the Supreme Court. But let's say Donald Trump decides he wants somebody even further to the right of Gorsuch. Okay, if the Republicans go nuclear with the Gorsuch nomination, they're not going to be able to change the rules back, and the Democrats aren't going to be able to stop a single one of his judicial nominees. Not one.
Well, I think it's about time. I think it's about time that the hand was forced, and the fact that we won the House back, the fact that we won the Senate back, and the fact that we won the White House back should be a clarion call to every Republican, every conservative thinker that says that whatever we have in our arsenal, we need to pull out in this battle and defeat this agenda of stall tactics, of boycotting, of censorship, of advancing an agenda in opposition to what America has asked for. America voted. They voted for the repeal of Obamacare when they elected Donald Trump. America spoke. And these representatives in this liberal left are not representing their constituents. They're representing their party. The party last night announced that Donald Trump was not elected president of the United States.
Yeah, that was news to me, by the way. I watched this unfold. That was news to me. What?
Right, and by the same token, that anyone who lives within the borders of America has constitutional rights afforded to them at the expense of a citizen. I don't get social services to the tune of an illegal alien. I don't get to the tune of an undocumented refugee that comes into this country. I don't get all that. I'm paying for all that, but I don't get it as a citizen. And all of a sudden now the citizenry is now being looked to, and what are there, 330 million, 340 million citizens
like that,
of the United States and 11 million illegal aliens. And we're taking a small percentage of the residents of the continental United States, singling them out for privileges, benefits, and blessings that my parents, my grandparents had to come to this country, swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, give up their citizenship in their respective countries to take citizenship in America. And you could not come into this country any other way. In 1934 and in 1904. This was the way you came through Ellis Island. That's where you came into this country. That's where you got your name changed and your papers. And that was the only way in. And if you were sick, you didn't come in. If you were violent, if you had, you didn't have the recommendations, you didn't have the sponsorships, you couldn't just walk in off the boat and say, I'm here.
And it goes even further than that, Eric. I think it was, 1952, when there was a measure passed to tighten the immigration down even further, when they said that they didn't want anybody in who follows a creed that calls for essentially the overthrow of the U.S. government.
Well, that was the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1952.
I'm sorry, 1952.
And amended in 1965 to take a religious test out of it. So this is what they're trying to apply to Donald Trump's moratorium by saying it's a religious test. Now, what people fail to realize is a country may be predominantly Muslim, but there is no country now except for Saudi Arabia who has now expelled the last of the Christians. They have 2 Jews still left in Saudi Arabia. Iran has a Jewish population of around 6,500 to 7,000 in the Jewish community. So even Iran is not 100% Muslim. Therefore, if you're from Iran, you can't come into this country. Meaning, if you're Jewish from Iran, you're part of this. Well, is that a religious test for Jews? The answer is no.
No, of course not.
But because they want to paint everything with a broad brush, because they want to use a roller on a watercolor and paint everything with the broad stroke of a brush, and then you have the judges, appointees, who are making determinations based on whether or not they assess a threat. And they're abrogating the power of the executive branch.
Well, it's even worse than that, Eric. This judge in Hawaii, went so far as to look at what Donald Trump said during the campaign.
Right.
And then he translated what he thought Donald Trump meant. Okay, rather than what he actually said. Now, I'm no lawyer. I don't play one on TV even, but it just doesn't seem to me that the statements that a candidate makes during an election is basis for a decision in the court. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that, to me, that's not what a judge is supposed to look at.
No, he's supposed to look at the law. He's only supposed to look at the law, and he's supposed to look at the application of the law and determine whether or not the law is being upheld or the law is not being upheld. And according to the law of the land, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1952, amended 1965 to remove a religious test, that anyone who does not swear allegiance to the United States of America, to the Constitution of the United States, and every, without exception, observant Muslim believes that Sharia is higher than the Constitution.
Right.
Therefore, they are not here to uphold the Constitution. Well, what about the Mexican? What about the Vietnamese? What about the Guatemalan? What about the Nicaraguan? What about the Costa Rican? What about those who come onto our borders? We are looking at individuals of questionable background.
Well, and correct me again if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like the law also says that the president has the right to restrict immigration to certain classes of individuals, based on things like national security interests. If Donald Trump really wanted to ban all Muslims, as the left likes to say, it seems to me that he's actually done a pretty horrible job of it, wouldn't you? There's like what, 1 point however many billion Muslims in the world.
1.6 billion.
1.6 billion. These countries that he has banned or wants to ban immigration from, as I understand it, they only make up maybe 35% of that total population. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if he really wanted to ban all Muslims, as the left wants to say, then wouldn't he have banned immigration from, say, Indonesia?
Sure, Malaysia is 99% Muslim.
Malaysia, yeah. Like I said, if he really wanted to do a Muslim ban, he's done a really ridiculously poor job of it.
There's now 55 countries which are predominantly Muslim. And he banned 7. This is preposterous. We're talking with Joe Newby, author of the book Banned, How Facebook Enables Militant Islamic Jihad, available right there on our website at ignitinganation.com or IANBN.com under Books and Media. Click on it, get a copy of it for yourself, brought to us by our friends at World Ahead Press. He's also the proprietor of conservativefiringline.com, an incredible blog with up-to-the-minute consolidated digest reporting and articles with commentary about what's happening around the country, around the world today. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Joe Newby about North Korea. We're going to talk about the shadow government, not the conspiracy, because it's not a conspiracy when it's fact. It's not a conspiracy when it's overt. It's not a conspiracy when everybody knows about it. And we're going to return and talk to Joe Newby on the other side of this break. We'll be right back. This is Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation Ministries, and your host for Revealing the Truth right here on the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network. I'm coming to you today with a very special offer from one of our very prominent guests, Dr. Carl Gallups. For your tax-deductible contribution of $30 or more, Pastor Carl Gallups will send you a signed copy of his new best-selling book, When the Lion Roars. In this book, you will discover what the Bible really says about the unprecedented demonic outpouring of the last days, the spirit of the days of Noah, the connection of technology and prophecy fulfillment, the spirit of Sodom and Gomorrah, apostasy in the last days church, why Turkey is central to last days prophecy, why Israel is the centerpiece of end-time prophecy, the historical truth about Islam and ISIS, the Shemitah, the mystery of 666, and how Christians in the church should respond to these prophetic times. We are living in intense but exciting times. We're living in prophetically unprecedented times. Be on guard, prepare your heart and mind, make certain you have a biblical balanced understanding of our generation. Be ready with wisdom and perspective. We have been raised up for such a time as this. The lion of God's prophetic word is roaring. Do you hear its call? Send your check payable to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242.
Hi, I'm Angela Waite, and I just finished my interview on Revealing the Truth with Rabbi Eric Walker. I hope that in some way you will be touched by my story and that you will receive the healing you so desperately desire. I would like to share my story with you and send you a personalized signed copy of my book, Bomb Pops, Blow Dryers, and Butterfly Kisses, for your tax-deductible gift of $25 or more to Igniting a Nation, Inc. I will personally send you my book along with a note of encouragement as you take this journey with me. You will not only be supporting the work of Igniting a Nation, but all the proceeds that I receive from book sales goes to support Ramsey's Rescue, which targets the physical and spiritual care of the little ones who have been abandoned. It is the goal of this ministry to provide food, clothing, education, medical, a safe and loving home, and hope. Please help support both ministries with your gift and make a difference in so many lives today. Send your check payable to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. May the Lord bless you for your generosity and support.
This is the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of Revealing the Truth, right here on the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network, inviting you to join me every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for our Prophecy in the News classes. Each week I take the headlines from around the world that have a biblical connection and present them in a way that brings the news and the Bible to life. There are over 2,500 prophecies in the Bible, and there are so few classes available to see how they connect with world events. We cover everything from Islamic terrorism to the changing relationships between Russia, Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Israel. Prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes, and to many, it is complicated and hard to understand. In just 1 hour each week, you'll be given the tools and the biblical connection to world events. With so much going on, and so few reliable sources of news, I encourage you to join me every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at St. Mark United Methodist Church in Northport, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at Beechwood Baptist Church in Mount Olive, and every Thursday night at 7 p.m. at Mountain Chapel United Methodist Church in Vestavia. If you want to make sense out of what's happened in the world around you, this is the class for you. All are welcome. Times and location addresses can be found on our website at ianbn.com. I hope to see you there. Shalom. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I welcome Joe Newby back to the program for the Joe Newby Hour. You can watch the Joe Newby Hour the first Monday of every month right here on the IANBN.com network. And Joe is with us at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time, the first Monday of every month. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Good to be back.
Joe, we're talking offline about these leaks, this hidden agenda within Washington, within the appointees whose loyalties are to the Obama administration. And
Exactly.
the amount of collusion that it takes to perpetuate this false narrative about Russia. This is a cohesive, even James Comey, director of the FBI, even
Right.
those within the intelligence community that are former Obama appointees
Right.
are singing from this same hymnal that Donald Trump is colluding with Russia. They're releasing and naming innocent Americans in all this, and this is truly worse than Watergate.
I agree. Much worse than Watergate. You know, Watergate, yeah, what happened with Watergate was bad, and Richard Nixon did the right thing when he resigned. But this, I think, is a whole lot worse because it wasn't too long before the election, if you recall, that Barack Obama loosened up the rules and regulations regarding the NSA and the sharing of information, sharing it with something like 16 different intelligence agencies, some of whom are international, from what I understand. This is absolutely outrageous, and like we discussed before, if there was something actually credible, if there was something actionable that could actually tie Donald Trump to the Russians in an effort to defeat Hillary Clinton, that would have already been made public long before now, long before the election itself. This, to me, is just an excuse. They're throwing a temper tantrum. They hate Donald Trump. Let's face it. They hate the man, not just because he's a Republican, although that's enough to do it, but because of the fact that he's an outsider. He's not one of them. He's not, you know, he didn't grow up in their little tight little clique. This was his whole election literally shocked these people, I think, and made them quite literally go crazy with these conspiracy theories. And that's what they are. They're conspiracy theories.
You know, here we are, day 72, day 73 of the Trump administration. And when I look at the accomplishments versus the reporting, they are diametrically polar opposite in what's being said and what's being told.
Right.
During this period of time, the stock market is up some 14%.
Yeah,
That means that America is investing.
exactly.
They're buying stocks because they believe that they're investing in the economy because it can get better.
That's
You
right.
have companies who are bringing hundreds of thousands of jobs back to America.
Yep.
The commitment to support economic growth, jobs creation, which will lead to a reduction in taxes to the individual and the paying of taxes, the collecting of taxes, the billions of dollars in taxes which are sitting in escrow accounts overseas, gaining interest because of the loopholes within the tax code.
Right.
You now have a concerted effort in Washington to, what I heard was is going to be called NAFTA, but with two Fs, the North Atlantic Fair Free Trade Agreement.
Okay.
A modification saying that, listen, we're not sending a message to the world that we're not going to enter into trade agreements.
Right.
We're going to enter into fair trade agreements.
Right.
This idea that America first is something that makes us a isolationist is so untrue. Great Britain
Exactly.
Great Britain in their trade agreements is Great Britain first. Japan and Japan's trade agreements is Japan first. Iran and Iran's agreements are Iran first. China in Chinese agreements are China first. And all of a sudden America says, hey, we're just going to do what everybody else does, and we're going to take care of ourselves first. We're going to negotiate as the contract holder and the negotiator and take a position of strength as opposed to a position of weakness. And people are upset about that. It is economically, fiscally foolish.
Well, let me put kind of a human face on the way things are now, Eric. You know, years ago, I used to work for a iron furniture manufacturing company in Arkansas, and they had some issues. The guy who owned that company had purchased or had set up a company down in Mexico, and he moved some of the equipment from our facility in Arkansas down to Mexico. Now, you want to talk about fair? Yeah, you can move stuff. You can move, equipment, things that we had down to Mexico, but try moving that stuff back. You can't do it. And trying for an American company to try to set up down in Mexico is not quite as easy as you might think, because they are very strict about their labor laws, how many Mexicans that you're going to hire, how many people you're going to hire, how you're going to pay them, so on and so forth. It's not, people have this idea of everything is equitable. It really isn't. And as a result of what happened with that particular company, the primary company ended up going into receivership and was purchased and bought by somebody else. That's the kind of thing that happens, all the time.
Right.
So, people I don't think they fully understand what's involved with NAFTA and all this. I don't think they truly get the repercussions of it.
What people fail to realize, because they don't read except for headlines, they don't listen except for sound bites.
Right.
That this energy policy impacts our deficit. It impacts our trade balance. That America, because of the Obama administration, cut back on oil production, domestic oil production, and we became still dependent on foreign oil. That is problematic, that we're supporting, especially countries who do not support us, who have an agenda of hate. Now, there was a point in time when South America, part of OPEC, the South American countries were friendly, but because Islam is now moving into their borders and the influences of OPEC and the sheikhs are now bleeding over into that, and the financial support for those very strained economies in South America, they've now become dependent on subsidies from Middle Eastern oil. Right. So the allegiances and the alliances and the strategic initiatives which are being formed are opposed to the West.
Right.
By design, they're opposed to the West. By ideology, they're opposed to the West. So here Donald Trump approves the Keystone Pipeline, says we're going to have a clean coal initiative, speaking right to Ohio, West Virginia, Appalachia, Pennsylvania, all of the Midwest fracking companies, and looking for ways to extract safely, cleanly coal. That he's putting the jobs back into the backbone of America, which is what stimulates the economy. It is the group that made Levi Strauss, that made Lee Jeans, that made Wrangler jeans, Wrangler jeans, that made Acme boots, that made Big Ben, that made Mako tools and Mac tools, and all those tool companies made them their fortunes in being able to support people that used steel-toed boots and had to wear uniforms to work and overalls, and they spend money on those tools and equipment which support their economy. Now, we're seeing this shift away from shopping malls back to online, which is boutique-oriented, Even if you're
Yep.
shopping from Amazon, you're shopping at their various boutiques. You're looking for a product.
Right.
They place the product with whom they choose, and that's fine with me. Getting the
Right.
best price, best delivery. So you
Sure.
have companies like Sears that's going to go out of business, Radio Shack going out of business, Payless Shoes going out of business, J.C. Penney's going to go out of business.
Yep. There's a lot
And
of them.
There's a
on their
lot
way
of them.
out.
There's a lot of them. And they blame Walmart for that, but yet Walmart has one of the largest fleet of truck drivers, one of the largest maintenance depots, and what they're doing is redeploying people, not eliminating people. So you take the
Exactly.
minimum wage worker out of retail and you put them to work and train them, and they offer training. Walmart is a company that trains people.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
elevates
yeah.
people and makes them stockholders and provides benefits for them. And
Okay.
it's a better arrangement than what people working retail who had to work late at night, who had to work weekends. You get on one shift at Walmart, you stay on that shift, and you're set. So
Right.
they provided for employment, and they're in locations where there is no J.C. Penney's. There's a
Right.
Walmart in locations where no other retailer wanted to go because it wasn't economically prudent. Yes,
Right, and there's a whole lot that goes into why a store chain like that puts a store in, but it all deals with the bottom line. Where
Right.
if like here where we live, when my wife and I first came here, there was one Walmart in the area, and there's like maybe 60,000 people in the area of North Idaho where we live. Within, I'd say, the last 10 years, we have seen two, not one, but two new Walmart stores go in. Large stores at that, and they're always packed, every last one of them. So they're doing something right over there at Walmart. Say what you will about them. There's some things I don't like to get from there, but they're doing something right. And it's just like, Donald Trump. We've seen all these advances since Trump became president, and he hasn't been president very long. But like you said, we've seen an increase in jobs. We're seeing an increase in the stock market. We're seeing an increase in the economy. We're seeing consumer confidence, making a comeback. In short, Donald Trump is doing everything that he promised he would do. I mean, he even tried to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Right.
I don't necessarily fault him for that. I fault the Republicans in Congress for that. But Donald Trump is doing everything that he said he would do, even with these travel bans. This was nothing new.
Right.
He said he was going to do this when he was running for office.
Let's talk for a minute about Paul Ryan.
Okay.
I'm very much on the fence about Paul Ryan. Paul
You're
Ryan,
not the only one.
Paul Ryan had the opportunity to do exactly what our congressman from Alabama just proposed. It was a 3-line bill
Yep.
to repeal Obamacare. And the provision is repealing Obamacare means that by 2019, Obamacare is over and done and replaced. This is the logical progression of things. You put an end date on it, you repeal it,
Right.
and you work on the replacement to be coterminous, meaning it goes into effect at the end of that period. Now, if you can implement it in 2018, you do so, but Obamacare is over at a certain date, January the 1st, 2019, or December 31st, 2018, it's done. That
Right.
puts the onus on Congress to come up with an equitable, passable health care initiative that's
Right.
going to be affordable, that they can
And
examine.
it makes sense. It makes sense. And like you said, it puts the onus on Congress to do what, especially the Republicans, to do what they should have been doing for the last 6-7 years.
So
is working on replacement for
what
this.
makes Paul Ryan any different than Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton that wanted their name associated with a health care initiative? Because Ryan Healthcare, Ryan Care, whatever it was that it was called falls right back on him, and he tried to get that passed,
Right.
and he couldn't. He
Right.
couldn't. As the Speaker of the House.
Right. Well, and again, the audience has to understand that, Republicans in not just Congress, but Republicans in general are not all of one mind about Obamacare or about pretty much anything.
Right.
You have the Freedom Caucus, which is, the people that I tend to want to gravitate toward. They're the ones that are being blamed for this. But in reality, the ones who ought to be blamed for this failure are the moderates, what we might call the rhinos, the ones who are looking to the next election rather than to doing what's best for the country. This is the problem. When these guys go back home and they've got all these protesters screaming and yelling and calling them Nazis and what have you, whatever else they were doing at these town halls, they look at that and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I got to face these people in a year and a half or 2 years. If I don't do X, Y, or Z, I'm probably not going to get elected. Well, it doesn't matter that most of these protesters were AstroTurf, that they were brought in.
Right.
Some of them probably paid, George Soros money to do what they did. The fact is, Republicans have been running ever since 2010, Eric, on this idea of we are going to repeal and replace Obamacare. They have had years and years and years to put together a replacement, and they have failed to do so. What bothers me so much about Paul Ryan and this whole effort is that, Paul Ryan was not really a fan of Obamacare. I remember him arguing with Barack Obama about this. I remember watching these things on C-SPAN where he was going over the finer points of the policy with Obama and arguing this or that or the other. I'm thinking that maybe because he's now leadership, that something happened to him. I don't know. I don't want to think that. But it's always the same thing. There's always an excuse. Oh, we can't do this or that because we don't have, all 535 seats in Congress or something. There's always some excuse as to why they can't do something. When, like you said, you're a member of the House who put together this very short, very sweet, and simple measure that says Obamacare's done.
Right.
So I think a lot of this has to do with money. A lot of this has to do with backroom politics. I think that there's an awful lot of that going on, and I don't think this is any different, quite frankly.
So when are we going to get to drain the swamp? That's Donald Trump. Donald Trump was elected for jobs creation, for tax reform, for Obamacare.
Right. And the wall.
And the wall.
And the travel ban on terrorists.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And
those were the main things.
And to drain the swamp, which was, as you know, who the original author of that statement was, Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And as Reagan-esque as this may sound, Ronald Reagan's playbook was increase defense spending, restore our military, because he too inherited this desperate military situation that we're now faced with today. And so the significance of this is that it worked. Ronald Reagan's administration was in the same pattern. He was a Democrat at one point. He became a populist. He wound up appealing to that swath of 30% to the right, 30% to the left, and getting that American way. One of his most brilliant statements, and asked about his age compared to his younger opponent.
I remember that.
Yes, when he said, I will not dignify the question by offering any commentary about the youth and inexperience of my opponent.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right, and it was a brilliant answer, and he was a brilliant man who was raised up in California politics, which is the meat grinder of politics.
Oh, yes.
And survived it and succeeded in it. Donald Trump has taken a lot of the playbook from Ronald Reagan. And those of us who remember Reagan, who it was clean up on aisle 6. It was what he inherited in this country was interest rates at 18%.
Oh, I remember those days.
Gas rationing.
I remember
Iran hostage crisis. One problem after another. We were no longer a world power. We were too busy worrying about the president's brother peeing on the side of a building.
I remember I was in the Marine Corps when Jimmy Carter was president, Eric, and I will never forget, Jimmy Carter coming on the television and telling us that our days as a great nation are over and we just need to get over it, and that just, I listened to that. I remember listening to that as a young Marine and thinking to myself, who is this guy? Why is he there? And it's like the whole country, when Reagan won that election, and within hours, our folks in Iran were released and brought back to the States. You could feel, especially where I was at the time, Eric, just the whole morale of the country changed when Ronald Reagan became president. Yes. I think you're right. We're seeing the same kind of thing here. The difference between Ronald Reagan, though, and Donald Trump is this. Ronald Reagan, like you say, he had experience. He was governor of California.
Right.
His work as an actor, he knew how to work crowds. He knew, that the guy knew how to take something bad and make it good. He knew how to take lemons and make lemonade. And when he addressed the American people, he was funny, and he got people to like him. He was a very likable kind of a man. I'm not saying Donald Trump isn't. I'm saying Donald Trump is a different type of an individual, in that Donald Trump is a doer.
So you think Donald Trump should make a movie with a monkey?
No. But it may not hurt at this point.
Bonzo goes to Washington again, revisited.
Yeah, there you go. Making monkeys great again or something. I don't know. But Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump loves America just as much as Ronald Reagan did.
Yes.
Donald Trump, though, he's got a different resume. And I think he needs to play on that. He's a doer. Okay, he's a guy who has a history of getting incredible things done on time and on budget, if not under budget.
Right. Is that Nancy Pelosi in the other room?
I think so. It sure does sound an awful lot like her. I'm going to take a look here after we're done. But, and I think Donald Trump, he's done, I think, an excellent job.
Yes. Even
with all these distractions. But I think he needs to go back to being the guy who gets things done, regardless of the consequences, regardless of the obstacles, I should say, reaching out to the American people. And that's one thing I think that really helped Ronald Reagan, was that when he was in, having these issues, because he had to deal with Democrats also. I mean, he had to deal with Tip O'Neill and some of these other guys.
Right. Another Georgia guy, another, Jimmy Carter, exactly. Georgia guy, Tip O'Neill.
Foley, Tom Foley from Spokane.
Right.
He had to deal with
Newt Gingrich. I mean, all these. Georgia pumps out some. Now, Tom Price, Georgia. Pumps out some interesting people.
Oh yeah. So Ronald Reagan had to deal with these people also, but he went directly to the American people.
Right.
And I think Donald Trump is doing that with his rallies.
Yes.
I think he needs to do more of that. Maybe perhaps addressing the American people more on television and addressing some of these things. I think he needs to do that. But I think Donald Trump has just an unbelievable amount of work ahead of him, because it's going to take more than 100 days to drain this particular swamp. You know, the stuff that's been going on in Washington, this stuff didn't get built up overnight, and it just didn't get built up over the 8 years of Barack Obama.
Right.
We had the 8 years of George W. Bush. We had the 8 years of Bill Clinton. We had the 4 years of George H.W. Bush. So all of this stuff has been building up, and the 20, 25, 30 years since Ronald Reagan left office.
Right.
All of this has been building up, and we're literally at a tipping point. So it's going to be impossible to drain this particular swamp in 100 days.
You're exactly right. Joe, I hate to do this, but we're out of time.
Oh, no.
I know. It's always great talking to you, and we'll visit you again with you next month at this same time on this same day, the first Monday of the month at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. We have the Joe Newby Hour, where you hear this banter and commentary. Joe is the author of Banned, a book that tells you how Facebook empowers, enables, allows for Islamic jihad, and also the proprietor of conservativefiringline.com. You can find a link to Joe's book at ignitingnation.com, IANBN.com, and click on Books and Media. Get yourself a copy of Banned from our friends at WND at World Ahead Press. We're going to sign off for today. As this completes our programming day, we'll look forward to seeing you right here at 9 a.m. Central Time, right here on the Igniting Nation Broadcasting Network. Until we see you here tomorrow on Revealing the Truth, we wish you shalom.